Picture the medieval Great Hall before you picture the food. A long room of stone and timber, firelight flickering against banners, smoke hanging in the air like a veil. The sound is a constant tide, boots on wood, laughter, cups striking tables, the low drone of conversation. And then the smell arrives first. Fat dripping on coals, bread warming near the hearth, herbs and spice cutting through the haze. In the Middle Ages, that smell was not merely an invitation to eat, it was a public announcement of power. A meal in medieval society was a performance with rules everyone understood. The table could proclaim who belonged, who mattered, and who did not. It could reward loyalty, display alliances, intimidate rivals, and turn the basic act of feeding people into a message. I control land, labor, storage, and trade. I can produce abundance in a world that is always one bad harvest away from hunger. And if I can feed you, I can also control you. Tonight, we time travel through the medieval meal as a symbol. Bread, meat, spices, fasting rules, manners, and the hidden labor behind the feast. Not just what people ate, but what every bite meant. Medieval halls were built like stages. At one end, the Lord's seat rose on a dais so the whole room could see him. That elevation was not decoration. It was a reminder that society itself had levels. The long tables below functioned like a social map. The closer you sat to the dais, the higher your status, and usually the better your food. Near the Lord, finer bread, richer cuts, stronger drink, more elaborate dishes. Farther down, simpler portions, fewer choices, and the cold edge of the room where drafts and noise lived. Even service reinforced hierarchy. Platters arrived in visible processions. Servants moved as if the household were a single machine. The goal was not only to feed the crowd, but to show that the host could command coordination, timing, and labor. Hosting a feast proved capacity. It said, "My stores are full. My people are organized. My authority is stable enough to spend food on display." If you want the clearest medieval class marker, look at bread. Bread was the foundation of life. It was also a label. White wheat bread, soft, pale, refined, signaled wealth. It required better grain, better milling, more sifting, more labor. Darker breads, rye, barley, oats, mixed grains, were heavier and more common among ordinary people, made from what the land could reliably provide. Sometimes bread did double duty as a plate. Thick slices called trenchers held meat and sauce. When the meal ended, trenchers could be passed down to servants or the poor. That act could look charitable, but it also reminded everyone that even leftovers were controlled, distributed, and ranked. In a medieval hall, the bread in your hand silently told the room where you stood. Meat was prestige, but it was also policy. For peasants, animals were living wealth: milk, wool, traction, manure, future security. Slaughtering a large animal was not casual. It was often tied to festivals, winter planting, or emergencies. For elites, meat could appear frequently and dramatically. Whole roasts, carved joints, glossy birds presented like trophies. Public carving mattered because it turned eating into spectacle. The meat was not hidden in a kitchen. It was displayed. Hunting made meat even more political. In many medieval regions, lords held rights over forests and game. That meant venison on the table could be a legal statement. I possess privileges you do not. The forest is not nature. It is part of my authority. Some animals carried extra symbolism. Boar suggested danger and dominance, conquering wildness and serving it on a platter. Certain birds, swans, cranes, herons, were prized not because they were always tastier than chicken, but because rarity itself was a luxury. In medieval dining, difficulty and exclusivity were part of the message. Now we reach the element people most associate with medieval feasts: spices. Their power was not just flavor, it was geography. Pepper, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, ginger, saffron. These traveled long routes with many hands taking profit along the way. Most people would never see the places these spices came from, but a wealthy host could bring far away into a bowl. A pinch of pepper was a small monument to trade networks, money, and access. Spices were also wrapped in learned meaning. Medieval medical thinking linked foods to humors and balance. Some ingredients were believed to warm the body or support digestion. Whether those beliefs were accurate is less important than the social effect. Luxury could be framed as sophistication. The elite were not simply indulgent, they were refined, educated, and health-conscious by the standards of their time. Spices allowed a host to display wealth and knowledge at once. Christian rules shaped medieval eating year-round. Many days required fasting, often no meat, sometimes further limits. But fasting did not create equality. It often revealed inequality more sharply. A poor household might experience fasting as actual restriction. Fewer calories, fewer options, less energy for hard work. A rich household could transform the same rule into variety. Fish in multiple forms, costly imports, elaborate dishes made to resemble forbidden foods, and substitutes like almond milk used in place of dairy. So the calendar became another stage. Obedience was public, but the ability to obey luxuriously was a privilege. The rich could fast without feeling hunger. The poor fasted because they had to. A medieval feast could achieve what threats could not. Loyalty that looked voluntary. To be invited mattered. It meant recognition. To be seated near the Lord was honor in plain sight. To receive special dishes or better drink was a public reward. These signals built networks. They told everyone who was rising, who was trusted, who was fading. Weddings and alliance banquets were especially charged. The food proved the union had economic weight. The number of guests proved influence. The generosity proved capacity. In a world where hunger was always possible, the Lord who fed many mouths looked like stability itself, a center that others should orbit. And exclusion had meaning too. Not being invited could be a warning. Being seated far away could be humiliation. The table could punish without a sword. The feast looked effortless in the hall. It was never effortless behind the scenes. Elite kitchens relied on a workforce. Cooks, bakers, brewers, butchers, dairy workers, servants carrying water and wood, turning spits, washing trenchers, hauling barrels, and cleaning endless mess. Timing mattered. Heat was dangerous. Knives were everywhere. Fires demanded constant attention. A banquet was logistics. This is why complexity itself was a status symbol. Elaborate dishes required more hands, more coordination, and more waste. When a host served intricate food, the audience was also seeing command over labor, the ability to mobilize many people to produce beauty and abundance on schedule. Status was not only the menu, it was the performance of eating. Medieval etiquette taught elites controlled gestures, clean hands, proper carving, restrained appetite, sharing politely, avoiding behavior that looked animal-like. These rules weren't merely hygiene, they were identity markers. To eat properly proved training and belonging. Manners created invisible walls, skills taught inside the class and not always accessible outside it. If you didn't know the rules, you could be exposed in seconds. In that sense, etiquette was another form of power. It separated those who belonged from those who merely arrived. Away from the Great Hall, most people lived on grain-based meals: pottage, porridge, bread, beans, onions, cabbage, leeks, whatever the season allowed. Meat was rare, often saved for festivals or extraordinary moments. Flavor came from herbs, salt when possible, and small amounts of fat. Hunger shaped decisions. In a bad year, households stretched food, watered down broth, ate seed grain, slaughtered animals early, and prayed for the next harvest. When famine struck, it was never only a natural disaster, it became a social one. Because the question was not simply, is there food, but who controls it? Granaries, rents, tithes, and obligations meant that power could turn scarcity into leverage. The medieval table at every level was connected to ownership. Medieval banquets loved theatricality. Dishes could be colored with saffron, arranged to impress, baked into towering pies. Decorative subtleties, sometimes edible sculptures shaped like ships, castles, saints, or heraldic symbols, turned dessert into messaging. These displays weren't only for delight, they were propaganda. They said, our lineage is legitimate, our victories are real, our wealth is deep, our household is ordered. In an age without mass media, the feast was a broadcast. So what was a medieval meal truly? It was a miniature model of society. Bread marked class. Meat marked privilege and law. Spices marked distance and money. Fasting rules displayed religion, but also inequality. Manners marked belonging. Feasts built alliances, rewarded loyalty, and intimidated rivals. In the Middle Ages, food wasn't just eaten. It was displayed, distributed, and guarded, because controlling calories meant controlling people. When you picture a medieval feast, don't only imagine roast meat and goblets. Imagine the fields, the mills, the workers, the laws, and the hungry seasons standing behind the table like unseen pillars. The meal didn't merely reflect power, it proved it.